to influence the capability procurement decisions we take this term.
Question number 10, Dr Reti.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Health, does he stand by all his actions and policies around meningococcal disease and the current meningococcal vaccination campaign?
The Honourable Dr David
Mr
Clark.
Speaker, yes, and in particular the targeted vaccination campaign in Northland, which started yesterday with the vaccination of 1,091 people on the first day. I do note that there has been a total of 7 meningococcal W cases in Northland this year. When the clinical test for an outbreak was reached and declared on November the 8th, the Ministry, Pharmac, the DHB all moved quickly to a response.
Matt King.
How will he further resource Northland's DHB's vaccination campaign following reports yesterday that parents were told not to turn up as the queues were too long?
Mr Speaker, I'm not surprised. I'm not clear that people were told not to turn up by authorities, but I am not surprised there was a big demand yesterday for the vaccination centres, and I'd expect similar today. It is understandable that parents want their children to get vaccinated as quickly as possible. The DHB has carefully planned this program and has started in the biggest population centres first. It will reach smaller communities in the second and third week of the campaign. I'm advised Northland DHB is telling the community it has plenty of vaccine available for the target groups and the risk of contracting meningococcal disease remains low.
Mr Speaker, did Pharmac's immunisation subcommittee discuss a vaccination program incorporating meningitis W in May this year?
Mr Speaker, to the best of my knowledge, no, because no community outbreak for meningococcal disease had been triggered in May. I note further for the record that in June of this year, there was not a single case in New Zealand of meningococcal W disease in June of this year. The member has raised a lot of fear about 2 isolated cases in Northland in April this year that caused some concern and clinicians to communicate with each other, which is entirely appropriate. There has been a close watch on this because although there's only been 7 cases this year in Northland, the potential consequences of a case are significant, and that's why they did move quickly on following November the 8th when an outbreak, when the clinical test for an outbreak was triggered. People moved quickly to make sure the response was in place.
Which members of Pharmac's immunisation subcommittee, if any, have lobbied Pharmac for a meningitis W vaccination program before the community outbreak was decided?
Mr Speaker, I'm not aware of that. Now, if the member has information on a particular lobbying campaign for meningococcal W vaccine before an outbreak was declared, that's interesting. I'm willing to look into the matter for the member. He can be in touch. But what I would say is that there were conversations around the country. This is a serious disease when it strikes. It's as I say, very rare. There were no cases in New Zealand at all in June this year. But when it does hit, it's a serious disease, and that's why clinicians were talking to each other when they saw even isolated cases earlier this year, and that's why when it became apparent there was something that met the community outbreak definition, a definition long relied upon by governments of different stripes, when that was triggered, albeit a low bar, when that was triggered they moved swiftly from November the 8th onwards to a response.
Mr Speaker. Is the Minister saying that the monthly surveillance data for April and May did not declare MEN-W cases?
That's what I'm saying. Not an outbreak.
Point of order.
I just want to be clear, I may have misheard the member's question. Could he repeat the question?
Again,
yes, thank you.
To get it right.
Is the Minister saying that the ESR's monthly surveillance data from April and May was not declaring MEN-W cases?
Mr Speaker, I did mishear the member, so I am glad we are asking the question again. There were cases in April and May, and a community outbreak was not triggered. There were 2 distinct individual cases in Northland. and that did not reach the clinical definition of an outbreak. And I'll read it again for the House, just so that we can be clear. The definition of a community outbreak of meningococcal disease is 3 or more confirmed cases of the same strain within a 3-month period that are not linked and are within a specific age group or community group, and the rate of disease is at least 10 cases per 100,000 people. That clinical definition was not triggered until November the 8th, whereupon a swift response ensued. That is the definition that's been relied upon by previous governments, by previous ministers of health, national ministers of health as well. I am convinced, the right threshold. When it was triggered, I am delighted that there was a swift response.
Question number 11, Greg O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister for Disability Issues.